Hi.
Hi, good to be back. Right, so we are going to dive right into the other half of the session today, which is about creating wealth. So we have Miss Xina, who is an entrepreneur and executive coach. She is going to be sharing with us her experience of how she started her business and how she was able to successfully scale her businesses, and also how you can use your skills to create wealth and how to grow, how to just basically build resilience and all of that. So I'm going to pass the mic to her to introduce herself and just start sharing. Thank you.
Hi. So as Progress said, my name is Xina Broderick. I am an executive leadership coach. I also have another business, which is a family business called Gooding Funeral Services, which is owned by me, my sister, and my husband. Although it's mainly my sister and my husband who take care of that business, and I focus more on the coaching business. In terms of my background, I was born and raised here in Leeds, where I'm speaking to you all from now. And I was born into a working class family. My mother was in a middle class family in Jamaica, came here and found that she was very much working class when she arrived. And that I think was the status quo for a lot of the Windrush generation when they arrived here, found things to be quite different to what they expected it to be. Education was key when I was growing up. It was not something I was particularly interested in, although I really, really loved books, and I'm still a voracious reader to this very day. And in terms of the reason I'm telling you a little bit about my background is so that you don't assume that I was born into a situation where having a wealth mindset was the norm. And in terms of wealth, I've got to make it clear, Progress. I've still not reached all of my financial goals. So I'm just keeping it real here, but absolutely do I have a wealth mindset, and unashamedly so. And that's really what I'm going to be bringing to this conversation today. Did you have any questions for me? You're on mute, darling.
Yeah. So thank you for introducing us to your background and telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do. So I'm gonna just run through, this is gonna be a different type of structure, because I'm gonna be running through questions with Ms. Xina, and she's gonna share through those questions that I'm gonna be asking her. So the first question I want to ask would be, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you were stepping into starting your businesses, and how were you able to overcome those?
Right. So first biggest challenge was trying to grow businesses whilst being broke. And I'm not sure if there's any of the people who are listening to this who would be able to identify with that. But for many people who want to have financial success and they want to have financial security, one of the driving factors is not wanting to experience poverty, or not wanting to continue poverty down throughout the following generations. So I felt like I wanted to work for myself. I just didn't think that I would be able to get a job that would pay me the kind of money that I wanted. And straight off, I'm just letting you guys know, my ambition was and still is generational wealth. That is what I want for myself, for my family, and for the people who I'm reaching behind and pulling forward. It's all about generational wealth and creating racial equity via encouraging Black people to become wealthy and creating their own set of rules. So I knew that I had these big goals, big big ambitions, and I was thinking, well, here I am with, I'm a single parent. I'm barely educated because I struggled through my first degree with my little boy, who's not a little boy anymore, by the way. And I had these big goals and ambitions, and I was thinking, I just don't know anybody in my circles who can help me to realize the goals that I want. When I was very small, I thought the only way I'm going to get what I want is to sing, because the only wealthy Black people who looked like me were singers. Even at that time, there weren't really wealthy athletes who looked like me. We've got the Williams sisters now, but in the 70s and in the 80s, you might have people doing well at the Commonwealth Games and Olympics, but they didn't become global wealthy superstars like Venus and Sabrina are. So I thought, well, if I'm gonna be rich, the only way I can do it really is to sing. I could sing, right? And then I saw that I heard that Janet Jackson had, well, I knew she was triple threat. Triple threat means you can sing, you can dance, and you can act. And I knew that Janet Jackson was triple threat. She could do all three of those things. So I was really surprised when I heard that she'd gone to university, not to do drama or voice or something like that, but she'd gone to do music business management. And I had never heard of a Black person being in the management side of the entertainment business. I mean, we know about Don King, who's in sports. So some of you might know about Don King, who was a massive sports promoter, multimillionaire. That came a little bit later, but certainly my experience wasn't of anyone who looked like me being in business or being in a management position. Then a little bit later on came Oprah Winfrey. At the time, she was the wealthiest Black woman in the world. And she looked like me. And I was thinking, and she's done it through business. So this is probably the way I'm going to do it. Still didn't know how though. But what I did do was go to university to specifically do business, and thought, right, this is it. This is my chance. This is the place I'm supposed to be. I'm going to learn. Then I left university and still had no clue. So that was really frustrating. When I left uni, the only kind of job that I could get was, what did they call it now? Team operative. And a team operative is a secretary, right? And I'd been doing temporary secretarial work without the £18,000 worth of debt that I'd accumulated at university. But this time now, I was a secretary with a child and 18 grand worth of debt. And I thought, this is not what the plan was. This is not what I studied so hard for. So I think really it was not knowing what I didn't know, having a poverty mindset. That was a huge challenge, because it wasn't only about the mindset, it was the blinking reality. I was broke. I wasn't here pretending and feeling like I was poor. I was actually poor. There were times where I had to choose between putting money on the gas card, putting money on the electricity key, or eating, because the amount of money that I got would only provide sufficient for one of those three, because there was a minimum amount you could put on the gas card, there was a minimum amount you could put on the electricity key, and then there was the weekly shop. So sometimes I'd send my son off to his grandma to get something to eat, and I'd go to my sister's for something to eat. So for me, it was looking at wealth from an impoverished position. That was probably the biggest challenge for me.
We'll mute again. Yes, so thank you very much for sharing. The next question I wanted to ask is there any memorable experience from your career that you would say kind of skyrocketed you to where you currently are?
There are three things, I think. There are three things. At one point in my life, I wound up living in Spain, right? I wound up living in Spain with my eldest son, who I had a lot of my adventures with. And I was waiting for my then husband to come and join me and my son in Spain. That was never to transpire. He was never going to come over. And I was really struggling to survive over there. My ex-husband was earning a good amount of money, but by the time I got to Spain, it became obvious as though that I felt we were happily married, but he definitely did not feel as though he was happily married. So there became part of what Marcy would probably refer to as financial abuse. So I wasn't really getting much in the way from money from him, or I didn't feel inclined to ask him for any financial help. I lost a lot of weight while I was out there, and he was doing the remote shopping. So he'd order shopping in for us and we could eat, but I didn't feel, I was so guilt-ridden, I didn't even want to eat any of the food that he was sending for us. And I thought to myself, if I could speak the language, if I was fluent in Spanish, because I could speak it, but I wasn't fluent. And the local supermarket told me that my Spanish wasn't good enough for me to get a job on the till, right? So I was thinking, if only I was fluent, I'd be able to sort it. I'd be able to get a good job. I'd be sorted. I'd be able to look after myself, and Malachi would be sorted. So when I came back to England to face my divorce now, I was thinking, right, well, I am in a country where I am fluent in the language. I now have no excuses. So when I came back to England, I came back to find that my ex-husband had not paid not one penny rent in the 6 months that I'd been away. He'd not paid any bills in the 6 months that I'd been away. He was earning a really good income and had boycotted paying the bills, which, by the way, were all in my name. So I came back to a huge amount of debt, a notice to quit from the flat I'd been living in happily for 10 years before I even met my ex-husband, and thought, right, well, this is where I've got to get my act together and prove that language is no longer a barrier. I'm intelligent. I know that I have a multi-billion-pound brain. I just need the chance to think about it. So I thought about it. I moved up to North London to live with my sister. She and her husband were fantastic to me and my son. What I did was every morning I would get dressed for work. I had no job, right? I'd get dressed for work. I'd go to the local temping agencies because I could still type. I could still do the whole secretarial thing, no problem. And I would ask them, I'd phone them and say, have you got anything for me? And they would inevitably say, no, we don't. So then what I would do was catch the bus or the tube to Brent Cross shopping centre, where there was a Borders. Borders is a bookshop that I really miss it. I don't know if any of the ladies who were on this remember Borders, but I'll remind you, it was a massive bookstore, and it normally had a coffee shop. It normally had a Starbucks in it. And I was brass. I came back to face all of this debt. I came back to face so much debt that when myself and my son went to meet a bailiff, and I explained to the bailiff everything that had happened, the bailiff gave me money. That's how broke we were. That is how broke we were. God bless that bailiff. God bless her. So anyway, what I did was I'd go to Borders. I got out all the books on project management because a friend told me I'd be able to make some decent money on project management. So the situation with that flat that my ex-husband had been living in and not paying for anything in, that was a council flat, which I had now got the right to buy. He was supposed to be finishing off the right to buy process and then coming to meet me and my son in Spain. He didn't progress anything on the right to buy situation and didn't pay any rent. So I came back and I was further backwards in that process than I had been beforehand. So what I did was I looked at how I could earn the money to get back. My friend said to me, if you get into project management consulting, you'd be all right. I got all the books on project management out on the bookshelves at Borders, bought myself a Starbucks coffee and proceeded to teach myself project management. And every day it would be the same thing. I'd wake up, phone the agency. So in fact, I would get up and be dressed and ready for work. Phone the agency, see if there was anything for me. They'd normally say no. I'd go to Borders, continue my studying. Remember, I was doing this not because I was tight, but because I couldn't afford to buy the books. So I went there, would get the books out and pore over them and learn and study, was able to adapt my CV and get into project management and look after my son. That was the best money I'd ever earned up until that point in my life. We were able to move to a really nice area, Stanmore in London. And that was a really, really big thing. The second thing was where my father was quite ill, and it transpired that he was actually terminally ill, and he asked me and my husband if we would look after his business. This was, we were in the scenario where we're with the consultant, we're waiting to find out what's wrong with daddy, what's ailing him. And they explained to him that he's terminally ill. I don't get it, because what they say is, unfortunately, it is cancer, it is untreatable, and it is incurable. So I just thought it'd be a really elderly old man taking cancer pills or something. It didn't occur to me they meant that he had a matter of weeks to live, but that's actually what transpired. And my father's first thing that he said was, please don't let my business die. Don't let my business die. And I was thinking, well, I kind of, all right, being at home looking after my little boy. By this time, I'm on to my youngest child now, right? I'm kind of, all right, looking after my little boy at home. And I've got an online business selling natural skin and hair care products. And I'm making waves in the natural hair movement. I've just come back from Afro Hair and Beauty Show and I've lectured with Felicia Leatherwood, and I was not really thinking about doing the kind of business that you've got. By the way, my father's business is a funeral parlor. So I mentioned earlier that that's the family business that we have. So when it comes to big things that have happened to me in my career, that is a standout thing, because myself and my husband agreed ultimately to take on the funeral parlor. And the first funeral I directed was my father's funeral. And I am the first Black woman in the country to own her own funeral parlor. There are other Black women now who own their own funeral parlors, but I was the first. So those are the two standout things in my career.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very incredible. My question would be, so for young people who are starting out their career, how would you, what would be your advice for them to kind of figure out their skills and how to kind of align their skills with their purpose and just convert that into wealth as you did?
The first thing I would advise them to do, which I have done in my life, but not to the degree I'd recommend your audience to do, is network, right? So the lady who told me that I could make good money from project management, she effectively mentored me, but I didn't know that was the word back then. And I was a good mentee because I would hang off of her every word, follow her every bit of advice, and I respected her and I respected her time, and I will never, ever forget her. I'll never, ever, ever forget her. Her name is Diane Spence, by the way. She's doing great things with a fantastic youth organization. So when I remember the name of it, I'll mention it. That's one of the things. When people used to say, oh, you've got to get out there, you've really got to get out there and let people know what you're doing. I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. Get out there and get out where? So I would explain to your audience, getting out there means finding circles of interest. So if you've got a particular area of interest for your career, so if you want to be in law, join not only the Law Society, but become an active member in the Law Society. If there's a youth section for the Law Society, join that and head it up. You will become known in your area of expertise. You don't have to pay much. There might be a student membership fee for those things, but show up and ask them, oh, the next time you're doing a webinar, can I help? You'll be known by them for those things. The other thing that I did when I was younger and didn't know it was leadership was I was in leadership roles from the age of 18. I was homeless for a while in London when I moved down there. I lived in a hostel, Vauxhall Hostel, for a while. It was a hostel for the homeless. A lot of us were quite young. Next door was a hostel for the hardcore homeless. They were people who didn't even want to sleep inside. They were so used to sleeping on benches and all that kind of thing. They were feral. They didn't want any rules or anything, and were used to eating out of bins. That wasn't my experience of homelessness. I was next level up. Young people in a hostel, no fixed abode. And I was actually on their management committee as a representative for the people living there, for the residents. And I did not know that was a management role. When I had my son, I was on a management committee for his nursery. Again, I did not know that was a management role. It didn't occur to me to put those things on the CV and say management experience, management committee for hostel, for Centrepoint Hostel. It's a big hostel, it's well known. Management committee for a nursery, areas of responsibility, voluntary roles, people volunteer and put that on your CV. There are positions of management, particularly when you're at trustee level. They're not always paid, but you make them pay for you, And that's by putting that on your CV and saying, and this is where I led on this, and this. You can put that underneath that headline. And think about making yourself visible in that respect as well. I think just saying, you got to get out there and make yourself known is too loose. It's too vague. For someone who doesn't know what you're talking about, it's not really helpful. And I would love to help with that. Being on places like LinkedIn and just saying what you're doing, you're really good at that progress. If you don't know how to do that, look at what Progress does. She's fantastic at that. That is showing up what Progress does. She talks about what she's doing. She talks about her experience and how her experiences have led her to where she is. So people don't assume, oh, Progress just popped up and here she is now, this person who's really good at storytelling. No, she's crafted her trade. And there's evidence of that where she shows up. That is real diamond, really good advice. And the thing about having mentors, don't recreate the wheel. If there's somebody doing what you want to do, get as close to them as you can. If you can't get close to them, look a little bit further away, perhaps people who are doing what they're doing, but not quite as successful. So you at least have an understanding of what is required in their trade, right? Or what is required in their area of expertise. And then get the person that you can get close to introduce you to more people and more. And this is the value of networking. Get a book on networking. Even if you're at uni, network now. My niece goes to, I'm going to shame her now if she ever gets to see this. My niece goes to Oxford, right? I went to Oxford Business School. I got contacts there. One of the contacts pounced on me and said, your niece is coming to Oxford. You got to tell her she can have my telephone number. She can call me anytime she likes. Do you think my niece has contacted that woman? No. And I'm like, you're crazy. You're crazy. This woman wanted to help you. People, if you get the opportunity to make connections, grab that opportunity with both hands. All you have to do is check in on those people from time to time. It's not rocket science. You just check in on them from time to time. Hi, how are you? Are you working on any interesting projects at the moment? This is what I'm doing. Me and my family are really well. We've just recently gotten over COVID. How are you guys doing? I heard at Oxford that this was happening and it was in the news, and I thought of you. Are you okay? Is this impacting you? Remember, if there's anything you need, you can ask me. And if I can't do it, I'll look in my networks to see if there's someone else who can do it if I can't. Then you move on. You don't need to write an essay every time you check in, right? You just check in. You keep, this is what we call keeping our networks warm. And it's a polar opposite to only contacting people when you need something. That's not nice. That's called being a user. We don't need users in our network. Let me tell you a little story. Some of you have probably heard this, right? But remember it in the context when you move forward to network. There's an old Chinese saying that a man died and he went to the gates of heaven and he was asked, are you ready to go in? He said, do you know what? Let me just have a look first. Let me just have a look at what hell has to offer first. And then I'll make an informed decision. And the angel at the gate said, all right, took him down to hell. It was a massive banquet, lots of food piled high, people, lots of food. But all the people were skinny. And on this table, there were people sitting opposite them and they had long chopsticks. And they would try to pick the food up and put it in their mouths and they couldn't. And that was hell. And the man said, all right, I think I've seen enough here. Oh, let me see what heaven has to offer. Heaven, gets to heaven now. Very, very similar scene. Massive banquet, long table, lots of food. And people were looking kind of healthy there. You know what they were doing? They had the same long chopsticks. They were leaning forward, picking up food from the opposite person's plate and feeding that person with the food. They all ate healthily. That is networking. You help one another. And there's a saying, a high tide rises all boats. A high tide rises all boats. If you see someone being successful, congratulate them, but mean it. mean it. Don't do jealousy. Do inspiration. If you see someone, especially if they're in your circles and they're doing well, that's something to celebrate. It means it's more realistic for you to do that too. Hold on to that. Celebrate it. Swim in that glory. Let it infuse into you, into your DNA. Own it. Own it.
Wow, that is powerful. Like, I feel so inspired. And I think when someone commented and said they also feel inspired as well. My next question would be about networking that you mentioned. So for me personally, as an introvert, I find networking events very draining and very exhausting because, you know, you have to meet a lot of people, you have to, you know, be interested in what you're doing, you have to initiate conversations. And so how would you encourage a young person to go about networking? Like, how can they go out of their comfort zone and network? How can they break the barriers that comes with networking?
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned you're an introvert. People assume I'm an extrovert.
I think you are.
I'm not. I'm what is known as an ambivert, and I'm glad this has come up because it is relevant, and I think we need to really be inclusive. Not everybody is an extrovert. Not everybody wants to go to networking things. I'm going to tell you, Progress, I don't like leaving my house, you know. I don't like leaving my house. Winter, I just stay in my house. I stay, well, I'm in a position where I can do that now. But I literally hibernate. I don't miss going out. So, and an ambivert, for those of you who don't know, is somebody who comes to life when they're around lots of people and comes to life when they're totally alone. And that's me. I'm quite happy on my own. But when I go out, I'm fine. I'm okay. It's just getting me out there. That's a bit of a trick, because why would I leave my house when I'm happy here? So for introverts and for people who do not really like the whole going out thing, and particularly young people, you might want to just start off with your friends and your friends' parents. Your friends and your friends' parents, they've probably known you all your lives anyway. You know, you can say to them, oh, I'm really interested in such and such. Do you think you could help me meet somebody or another? So let's take you for example. I know that your background is writing and journalism and storytelling and all that kind of stuff. And you're an introvert, right? So it could just be that in your friends' circles, either you've got a friend whose parent is a journalist, or you've got a friend's parent who works in media, and they might be in media and be the cleaner. Doesn't really matter. All it could be is you say to your friend's parent, oh, I've heard that you work for IPC or advertising or a newspaper or a great big media branch, and I know you're the cleaner, but whose name do I need in order to find out what kind of jobs they might have there or what kind of internships they might have there? Where would I go? If you don't know, would you mind asking somebody for me, please? Someone said to me before, no matter how high you aim, you will have people in your networks who can help you. Well, I already mentioned, I'm from a working class background in Chapeltown in Leeds. It was so deprived. It was one of the areas of social uprising that happened in the 80s because it was deprived. There was a lot of racism with the police going on there, all sorts of stuff. I don't know millionaires and billionaires, or certainly I wasn't raised around them. I know I quite possibly know them now, but they haven't announced to me that they are billionaires. They just happen to be in my circles, right? So saying to somebody like me from my background, oh, no matter how high you want to reach, you're likely to know them in your networks. No, you need to sometimes go outside of your usual circles in order to find what you need. And outside of your friends and your friendship circles, if that's not really, if you've check them though. Please check them. Don't take this for granted. Don't assume that you're just surrounded by people who don't know anything. I'm sure that you'll be surrounded by people who do know something, but you're just not aware of it. So it's about, you know, having those conversations with your smaller networks, your friends, your family members, your broader family members. I know so many people who would say they've got a rich uncle, or, you know, whether it's here or whether it's in Nigeria or Jamaica, or they're smashing it in America or Barbados, wherever, they've got a wealthy family member. And it's not about saying to them, oh, hi, I'm your great niece. Can you lend me £500 to have a birthday party? It's not about that. It's about being smart with your connections. No matter how near they are or how far they are, you need to be smart about your connections. Learn about networking, buy books on networking, become the best networker. And just another thing, Progress, for the introverts, please, when you do your networking, do a brainstorm and work out the wide different ways that you can network, and then choose the ones that appeal to you most, because they're the ones you'll actually do. Yeah, they're the ones you'll actually do and remain consistent in. There's no point in signing up for something like Business Networking International, also known as BNI, where you got to turn up at 7 o'clock on a Friday morning and stand up and do an elevator pitch. If that whole thing really turns your stomach, there's no point in going for that. But there might be other things, even if you were to ask your introverted friends or your friends' parents, of the introverts who network, what is your favorite way of networking? Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. And just to add to that, I think one thing that has helped me so far in my networking journey is one, I get this Eventbrite invitations every weekend. It tells me about events happening around me in London, in person and online. So I pick and choose the ones that I feel comfortable in going. Another thing is when I'm going, I try to go by myself, because you are tempted to go with someone because you want to feel comfortable around them, you want to go with your friend. But if you go with someone, you are less likely to actually network or go out and speak to people, because you're just going to cling to your friend. So that is something that has helped me. I go alone. And then the last one is when I go for networking events, I don't see it as networking, because even the word networking is a bit jarring. So I see it as having a conversation. So I go with the mindset of speaking to one person and not everybody. So if I'm able to speak to one person for that day, I'm done. So I don't know if this can help people who are introvert like me, but I just wanted to share that.
Glad
yes.
you did. There's something I'd like to add to that, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I work with a lot of women. In my coaching, I specifically work with mothers who are in executive roles who are over the age of 40, right? And a lot of the women I work with, even though they're in leadership roles, they are not strategic. They're not strategic. And this is not an insult. It's to do with social conditioning, right? We're sort of supposed to be here to be nurturing. So we're in leadership roles, we're really good at nurturing teams. We're really good at helping people rise through the ranks. We're often really good at mentoring people, but we're not necessarily good at being strategic. So whether you're going to your networking event, Progress, or your audiences are going to their networking events, you need to have a strategy, girlfriend. You need to know why you're going there for a start. You need to know what you want to get out of it. So you might say, I want to at least speak to one person and make a good connection there. Because it's not always about quantity. It's often about quality of the connections, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, I work with corporates. So I know if I'm going to go to a networking event, I'm looking for people who are A, working in a corporate environment, and B, willing to give me an introduction into their organization. And I will collect as many of those as possible, come back home, write up my thank you. It was really great meeting you at the event. If you need me, remember that feeding the person on the opposite side of the table to you, right? If you need me, just ask, look through my networks. This is what I say on LinkedIn. And I don't know if that answers, it was Eventbrite notifications. Thanks for that. When you are looking at helping the person that you're networking with, you're literally looking at how can you feed them? How can you help them? You're not saying, right, this is what I need, and then I need that. It's like, it's a lot for someone who's never met you. But if you're going to a networking event, they kind of know what to expect. But being a good networker is going with service in mind. And you can say, look through my LinkedIn connections. If there's anyone there you need to be introduced to, please let me know. And Progress, I'm sure you know that I'm true to that, because I know you've met Marcia, Dr. Yvette, she's brilliant at that. I know I met you through her. This is how we roll, right? Yeah. This is how we roll. And none of us have lost out. None of us have lost out by these recommendations. This is what you guys need to be aware of, because you're not necessarily going to know. Recommending other people does not make you lose out. It helps you. Bye, Joy.
Oh, bye, Joy. Yes, thank you very much. And yeah, you're right. Extending your network to people. Like I met you through Dr. Yvette, and then I met Miss Marcia through you. So like this event itself is actually brought about through networking, through support, through recommendation, and I really, really appreciate you for that as well. My last and final question is, how do you manage your personal life and your professional life? How are you able to kind of draw the line and have a balance between both, being a mother, being an entrepreneur, being a professional as well?
Right, so I'm very fortunate in that I do have an income from the funeral parlor, right? So that means that in my that gave me greater flexibility when growing my coaching business. I didn't need to do like ambulance chasing and begging people to do my stuff with me. I could grow it in the way I wanted it to grow. There wasn't that desperation that I had when I left university and became a secretary because I absolutely had to. It wasn't the same when starting and growing my coaching business because I had that financial security there, right? So where it comes to looking after my family, I decided I wanted to create the business of my dreams. I wanted to have flexibility for my children because I've got 4 sons and 2 grandchildren, right? And I wanted to be able to be there for my family. And I've got a wonderful husband as well. God bless his soul. He's such a great guy. And I love him. But aside from loving him, I actually like him. I like being around him. I like his company. So being able to spend time with them was absolutely paramount to me in the way I wanted to create my business. So I charged appropriately. I knew I was going to be charging premium rates. I have a luxury offering. I go for corporate, and my demographic are people who can afford me. And that was so I wouldn't need to be running a business and killing myself out and feeling like I'm going to have a nosebleed at the end of the day because of all the pressure. No, I thought, no, if I had a fairy godmother wave a magic wand and say, Xina, you can have the business of your dreams, what would it look like? The way I've created it is exactly how it would look. And I did a little exercise with Marcia a few years ago about creating your perfect day. The way my business is run is how I'd created my perfect day about 12 years ago. I'd written down, what would it be like when I wake up? What would my bedroom be like? What would my house be like? What are my kids going to be doing? What kind of business will I be running? How do I make my income? Am I scrimping for money, or am I minted? All of those things I put in my mind's eye, and on my perfect day, when I meditate, I would literally transport myself to my perfect day. And I've been doing that for years, and emotionally, physically, and energetically, I've been moving towards that perfect day every day of my life, even with the stuff that I put on my vision board that reflects my perfect day. So when it came to sitting down and thinking, what's my business going to look like? I knew exactly what my business was going to look like. So I'm able to walk to school and collect my son if I want to. I can walk to school and drop him off in the morning if I want to. I make sure that I'm not back to back in meetings. I have gaps between my meetings. I approach my work and my business with a hobby lifestyle. And it's something that I talk about a lot. I do everything that I love in my business and I outsource the rest. I'm not here playing at being happy. I'm here to do the real thing. So I cut out as much as possible. The things I don't enjoy, I outsource. And the things that I love doing, I keep. But this is easier for me to do because I was able to work out which career I wanted. And it's taken decades to work out which one. When I was at uni, I knew nothing about being an executive leadership coach, knew nothing about that. Heard of Tony Robbins, but he was so far out of my circles, it didn't mean anything to me. I thought it was more of a professional speaker, a motivational speaker than a coach, didn't really know what he did. So yeah, that's how I do the balance. Oh, something that I need to let you guys know about the balance. If you're going to be self-employed, if you choose to be self-employed, try your best, if possible, and it might not be possible at first. If you've got children, try to work your holidays, your annual leave around their holiday, and then your important appointments around that. Okay, so you don't want to find that, hey presto, you've booked a really important major project and it happens to launch on your child's 16th birthday. So look at your diary at the beginning of the year, look through your diary, cross all your school holidays out or major events out. If you've got people who are getting married in your family and you know that's coming up, book your annual leave, look at it from the beginning of the year, and then let your work fall around as far as possible. Yeah, because I know people like teachers, they don't really get to do that. You know, they've got to work term time and that's that. But that's what I would say with work-life balance. Make it happen as far as possible. And if it's not possible, make sure you've got a deadline. If you're working and you're flat against it and, you know, it's really hectic, make sure you've got an end date in sight. Don't let that be the rest of your life.
Right, powerful, incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing this powerful insights. I wonder if anyone has questions. I think I've exhausted all my questions for now. So I am open to receiving questions from the audience. If anyone wants to ask a question, you can just put on your mic and speak, or you can type it in the chat. We've actually gone above time, but I'm actually open to just wrap up with the questions.
Thank you, Progress.
Right. It's not looking like we're having any questions, so I'm just gonna call it a day today. It's been an incredible day for me personally. I feel very, very inspired, very, very pumped, and very knowledgeable in certain areas that, oh, sorry, I can see a hand up. Hanifa, yeah, sure, you can definitely ask a question.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Hanifa.
Hi. I had a question in regards to, you know, when you graduate, and even though you have a path that you did study in, you could be working on that, but you, let's say, on and off, but you want to have other sources of income and work towards it. You have ideas, but how do you overcome the fear of like pursuing them because of financial insecurity? Is scared like the little that I have now is not secure enough, and if I put it all in there, and the risk of like it not working out.
This thing about fear is real, right? And it comes up a lot. Hanifa, it's not necessarily specific to your age group. It rears its ugly head frequently throughout our lives. So I'm going to talk to you about fear. And I don't know if you remember me earlier on saying my mindset was the biggest problem, overcoming that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Fear Mountain, and I promise you it's relevant because I recognize we're over time, but I think this is important for all of you lot. If you have somewhere that you want to go and fear is there, fear is like a mountain and it's in between you and your ambitions, you can try and circumvent that and go around to get to your ambition, but you will find that fear mountain will relocate and again be between you and your ambitions. And even if you make a little bit of progress, you get a little bit and you think, oh, I'm doing really well, and then something comes up and then bam, fear mountain's right there again. The only way to get to your goal is to go over that mountain. You cannot go around it. It will just relocate, and it will relocate further along down your path. You have to conquer it head on. How do you do that? Right? Just remember, you start with one step at a time. And Fear Mountain is ugly and it's hard and it's rocky, but the more you climb it, the greater speed you pick up, and then you will find that the mountain starts to shrink. So the beginning part is the hardest. Please remember, the beginning is the hardest, right? It's like an illusion. You work over it, you get there, you'll have more obstacles, it'll be hard and dirty. You might even find that you're screaming into a pillow or crying, asking yourself, why did it even bother? But you'll remember your ambition, your why will keep you going. So you go over that mountain, you scrabble, you crawl, you ask for help, you research assistance. And you'll find you're climbing, the mountain's shrinking, the path is getting smoother, it's not quite so rocky. When you fall, your knees don't bleed anymore. And there is a downside to this, if you pardon the pun, because you get over the top, and when you're at the top, the thing shrinks so rapidly and quickly, you look behind you, and it's like, is that it? I'm on the other side, and here is my ambition. It's great. Remember to celebrate it, and don't forget how hard it was initially, because the likelihood is that when you come up against Fear Mountain again, you will completely forget the process that you have to go through, which is climbing the ugly, nasty, horrible front face of the mountain bit, and that it's going to shrink and you'll be okay on the other side. The other thing to remember is that fear is just part of a learning process. Failure is part of a learning process. If you've never failed, that tells me you've never tried anything. Yeah. So all you're doing is iterating forward, Hanifa. Okay. So you try something, think about the process and stick to doing the process, and the fear will fall to the wayside. It will have no real place in your process then. It's not written into the plan. You sit down, you think about these ideas you've got, you think, all right, then which one can I try? I'm studying. Am I to take it? You're at uni, Hanifa?
No, I graduated.
So you graduated and you've got a few ideas, right?
Yeah, working, but my main work, it does not give me the purpose. I just feel depleted. But I want to do something that matters, that makes me want to get up in the morning. But I have ideas, but it's just, I'm scared of like a mixture of, lots of people say don't do it, but you think about other people think about you, and the whole idea of putting yourself out there, it just gives me anxiety, even though I want to and I try to. But in terms of like you saying take more risks, but something inside you is preventing you, like procrastination, just like self-sabotage a lot, which I don't like. It takes a while for someone to overcome it, but I need the work.
It does. And you might need help with anxiety. If you know that anxiety is a regular thing that pops up for you, you might just need to get some help with your anxiety. Because remember me saying, when you're going over Fear Mountain, you can ask for help. It's absolutely fine to do that and reasonable to do that, to ask for help. And it might just be that that's something that you need help with, is anxiety. So it's not necessarily the fact that you've got these business ideas. The biggest challenge for you might be the anxiety itself, and having assistance with fear. There are things that can help you off the top of my head, including emotional freedom technique, which is tapping. You can just look it up on the internet, and you tap on meridian points, and it actually does work. I think they use it in do they use it in the NHS? I know they've definitely been using it for people with post-traumatic stress disorder, and they've found that it's really helpful. But there are those things that it can help you, but you might want to get a coach either independently or through where you're working to help you as well. Or there might be someone in your family who you can say, can you buddy up with me while I try and work through this? And then you just check in with them and say, it's been a really, really scary day today. Can I talk to you about it? And then you talk to them. But there are other things that you can do, even like using a Pomodoro system, where you think, right, on an evening, I'm going to work for 25 minutes on my business plan, on the idea that I've got. And then when that 25 minutes is up, I'm going to do something completely different. And when you chunk it down like that, again, in that 25 minutes, there's no space for fear. There's no room for the anxiety. So that's another thing that you might want to try, Hanifa.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think maybe because I've experienced the same thing when it comes to starting, having an idea and wanting to start it. Sometimes you end up overthinking the idea, and then it remains an idea in your head. So I think to add to what Xina said, if you have, I think you should find similar people who are doing the same thing, who are implementing those ideas that you're trying to start. Look for people who are doing the same thing. If that is content creation, maybe you want to start making videos, for example. Look for people who are making videos, maybe on TikTok, on Instagram, who are putting themselves out there and how they're doing it. Just, being around them, you can contract their confidence or the skills that they are taking to do that. And also, as Xina said, make a plan. Because when you have like a big idea, you're seeing it as this big thing. But when you cut it into chunks, like, I'm gonna, for example, when I started my podcast, I have a podcast that I run. So I first of all started by looking for, so the name came to my head, the International Students Podcast. What I did was I first of all went to the internet and searched for that name, if there was an existing podcast on that. And I searched for podcasts, people that are already creating content for international students. I watched loads of podcasts and listened to and watch YouTube videos on how to start a podcast and all of that. And then I made a plan. So I contracted a graphic designer, paid him, and he designed the logo, designed the flyer, and then I opened the Instagram account. So like those small plans will get you into the process rather than thinking about this idea of like wanting to start something. So those small plans will help you overcome the fears, as Xina has explained. And then lastly, I think it happens to us a lot, women, overcoming imposter syndrome. So you said, I don't know if I heard you correctly, but you mentioned you second guess yourself, or I might have heard that wrongly, but I think that could be a symptom of imposter syndrome, which I have experienced and which a lot of women experience. So I think you can work yourself around that. I'm having part of this month-long conference is self-sabotage. Yeah, that's what you said. I think that also relates to imposter syndrome. But on the 25th of this month, part of this conference, we're going to be having a speaker who's going to speak to us on imposter syndrome, overcoming self-sabotage, building your self-confidence. That's on the 25th of this month. You can check and register on Eventbrite as well. The same link with which you registered for this event, you can also register for that. And we'll be happy to kind of, the speaker hopefully will be able to support you in, overcoming that fear and just getting your idea running. Yes, hopefully that answers your question. I thank you so much. We've gone above time quite a lot, but I really feel inspired. I feel very equipped personally to kind of run with the things that I've learned, with the notes that I've taken. Thank you so much, Xina and Marcia. Please feel free to reach out to them. They are very happy to share their networks with you. As I said, them and their networks are a big part of this conference, and they're the reason why this is actually flying, because they let me into their networks. They were able to recommend part of their networks to me to be part of this event. So reach out to them. They'll be very happy to support and guide you through. So yeah, thank you. I am going to stop the recording now.